We are live.
Yay.
Waiting to see if we pop up here. We're live.
Yay. All right. Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Laura Markham. I'm delighted to be here live with you. This is our office hours for our second month together. And we are going to talk a little bit about, we're going to wrap up self-regulation. We'll talk a little bit about special time. And mostly, I'm here to answer any questions that you're having. So I guess I would start with self-regulation. I just want to say, we've spent the last month focusing on self-regulation, and it's okay if you're not perfect yet. You probably will never be, and that's okay. We're human, and this is the work of a lifetime for most of us. So just keep moving in the direction you want to go. And when you notice that you backslide, because that happens to all of us, when you notice that you backslide, just ask yourself what kind of support you need, because we backslide when we get stressed, when we get when we don't get enough sleep, when we get just too busy, or have too much responsibility on us and no one to help us. And sometimes when our child is having a hard time, we backslide because it just pushes our buttons. So whatever is going on that you notice that you're backsliding and you're not able to self-regulate the way you know you can, just give yourself some grace and calm down, and later ask yourself what kind of support you need, and then make sure you find a way to give yourself that support. And that's really the way you keep putting one foot in front of the other with special time and, getting where you want to go. Did we have anything else to cover? I mean, not special time, sorry, with self-regulation. Did we have anything else to cover about self-regulation that before we move on? What do you think? I don't know how much of a topic it's been lately on the group. I know it was, for a while.
I have a question right here, actually. I have a question from Anna Victoria. She has a 9-year-old daughter and a 4.5-year-old son. They're very sweet with her, but they fight over everything, and it's her largest trigger.
Okay.
A lot of teasing, and then from her daughter, and then her son retaliates physically. It's very long, but how can I stay away from consequences when I don't know what to say is essentially her question, when she feels at a loss, when, it's quite an intense situation.
Right. So I think you would start with your daughter, because she's 9, and that's old enough to not be teasing a 4.5-year-old. There's a reason she's doing that. And, all behavior has a reason. And her reason, we can assume, is that she has never quite forgiven him for being born. That's called the chip on the shoulder. And I would just say, start working with her on that. In your special time this next month, we're going to be talking about special time. So in your special time this next month, really work with her on her jealousy of her brother, and really try talking with her. She is 9. She's old enough to talk about her feelings of resentment toward him. And I think set really clear limits. So when you say, we don't hit, I don't think Alan is, I'm seeing her question here. I don't think Alan is the issue here. I think, of course, a 4.5-year-old is going to respond by being angry if he feels that he's constantly being teased by his older sister, who, younger children don't set the tone in the relationship. Older children set the tone. That's what the research shows. And if the older child is setting a tone of teasing and animosity, you're going to end up having a 4-year-old who's going to lose it and want to hit. And sure, we don't hit, but it's not fair to him to just take this all, to have it be his responsibility, right? It really is that she's instigating this, and then he's getting blamed for it. So I would just say you want to do prevention more than anything else. And when the kids are having a hard time, you want to do repair. You said when you don't want to do consequences, what do you do? So the answer is they have to do repair. And I would start by talking about this one-on-one and then talk about it in a family meeting. And one-on-one, you would just say, when I get angry at you and I lose my temper, I always apologize. I always make things better. And if you have a partner, if they have another parent, you can, or a step parent, you can say, and when your other parent and I fight, we always make things better. And you and your sibling, you say this to both of them. You can find a way to say it to a 4-year-old in the language that'll work for him. When you fight with your sibling, you need to make things better. So when you just did XYZ, where you hit your sister, pulled her hair, whatever you just did, when you say to your son, then you need to find a way. You hurt her body, and it's never okay to hurt someone's body, no matter what they said to you. And I hear how angry you were at her for teasing you. And I think she needs to hear from you how upset you were that she teased you. And I will go with you and help you to tell her. And no matter what, it's never okay to hit her. So I think she needs to make things better with you for teasing you, and you need to make things better with her for, pulling her hair or hitting her, whatever you did. So you want to expect a repair. They're not just doing nothing, right? They're not just allowed to continue to act this way toward each other and then not repair. I hope that's helpful. And I think I am hearing from people that we should do a sibling month. And I am planning to do that in the fall, actually.
Amazing, because that's helpful for me, having 2 children. I think all of us with more than one probably can relate. I have a great question here from Cheryl. She has triplet girls. One is overly confident, bossy, teases her siblings. And she's often one to correct her sibling. She's a perfectionist and needs things to be a certain way. We do special time 3 to 5 times a week, and roughhousing. She doesn't always like roughhousing. How to advise on how to help her decrease in teasing and her bossiness, I guess, her need for control.
Yeah, that's so hard because triplets, every person who's ever taken care of a baby knows that the only thing harder than taking care of one baby is 2 babies, right? When you have twins. And if you have triplets, then, it's just very, very difficult to meet the needs of triplets. So this has been true for her entire life. And she is competing. When you say she's a perfectionist, well, she's also bossy, and she teases her siblings and points out, that she's doing things right or somebody else isn't doing things right. That's because she has to prove she's good enough, because she worries about whether she'll get her needs met. So the most important thing to do when you have twins or triplets, and, my hat off to you, I've never parented twins or triplets, but the most important thing to do is to really work at meeting their needs and at talking about how you'll be there for them. They don't need you there every minute. What they need to know is that if they need you, you'll be there for them. So that's the most important thing. In the moment, I would point out what she's doing. So in the moment, if she's teasing, I would say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Words like that could really hurt somebody's feelings. I hear you telling your sister she's doing that wrong. You know what, sweetheart? It's the mom or the dad's job to say how something should be done. And it's perfectly okay with us if your sister does it this way, right? You don't need to be the one to tell her how to do it. And you know what? You can do it your way and she can do it her way. So you're really giving them permission to be different from each other. And you're giving her a limit about she's not supposed to be the one correcting her sibs. And if she's teasing, I would not have patience for teasing in any family, anytime. There's no reason to tease. And I would just say, those are words that could hurt someone's feelings. If you need something from your sister, if you have something you want to tell your sister, that's fine. Go ahead and tell her, but not in a way that's going to hurt her feelings, right? So you wouldn't allow teasing, and bossiness you can set limits on. And always go to the root of the behavior, which in this case, we just talked about.
Perfect. I have a question here, but from Marima, and I'm going to try and sum this up. It sounds like for this question that she has 3 children.
Okay.
Her middle child has a very strong relationship, close relationship with her husband. And when her husband is around, the dynamic changes within their family. Her middle child then becomes very possessive of her husband and very difficult with his mother, being mean and saying that she's bad, and he just wants his father to himself. Dad is very permissive. And I guess it just disrupts the family order. It sounds like, in a sense, when dad is home.
So I'm actually looking here at the rest of this, that this is a 4-year-old, right? Is that correct?
Sorry, it is a 4-year-old.
And he's the middle child, and he's had some trauma, and he's also very challenging. And it's hard for mom to regulate with him. So those are challenges anyway. And those factors are challenges anyway. And so there's something going on here also, I would say, with your, I'm speaking now to Mirna, with your relationship with your son, even apart from when his dad is there. I'm wondering, do you spend special time with him? Do you have one-on-one time with him? And are you working on your relationship with him? Because it says, your note says that you have a hard time self-regulating with him. Sounds like more than with your other 2 kids, and he's more challenging. So I would focus first on your relationship with your son. That'd be with your middle child. That's the most important thing. Second thing is, if he's mean to you when his dad's around, like it says he just hits you, for instance, I would set that limit very clearly. But I wonder whether it's because he feels like he doesn't get enough of his dad and he has to keep you away from his dad because dad has limited time with him, and that's the person he's closest to. It may be that he actually does feel closer to his dad since he's a challenging kid who pushes his mom's buttons, and so in that case, if it's true that he's closer to his dad and that's the reason that he's being aggressively mean with his mom when his dad is there, usually what works for that is letting him know that you're not in his way to get to his dad. And I think explaining it would never work. When I say letting him know, demonstrating it with a game is the way to do it. And there's a game that is invented for this purpose, and I've seen it work wonders over and over again. It's a game Larry Cohen invented. It's called the You Can't Get to Mommy game, or You Can't Get to Daddy game in this case. And I'm not going to go through the whole explanation of it, but it's on the website, ahaparenting.com website. It's, put in the words "you can't get to mommy" and you'll find the game. And basically it lets the child enact trying to get to his dad with mom in the way, keeping him from doing it, except that she doesn't actually keep him from doing it. She trips and lets him through and, accidentally, and, oh no, you got through. I'm going to try even harder. You're not going to get to daddy. I'm the best daddy keeper aware there is. And as he keeps trying, as the 4-year-old keeps trying to get to daddy and succeeds every single time, he's going to stop seeing mom as an obstacle. And what I have seen over and over again with this game is that the parent who's not favored, in this case, the mom, the child relaxes toward them because they realize they're not the obstacle. And so the child starts to even request time with that parent and stops being as jealous of them or as worried about them infringing on their time with the other parent. So you could try that game as well. But I would mostly really work on your relationship with him. I think that's really important. And we haven't talked about dad at all, and how dad handles this. So I would also want to have conversations with his dad about what your perception is of what's happening, and check that out. See if your partner has the same perception, if he thinks that that's what's happening. And if so, what to do, because
well, we froze for a moment.
About dividing that time between the kids so that each child gets special time with dad. And really, he has to, it's not enough to do special time for the mom in this case to do special time with the children. The dad has to do special time with the children. And otherwise, you're going to have the older son and a younger daughter who are going to grow up and say, yeah, dad really didn't love us the way he loved our brother. Or you were always dad's favorite. What do you know? And that's not a recipe for happy sibling relationships or happy grown-up children.
Thank you. I have a question from Colleen, and again, a really important question for any parent that has a child with chronic health issues. It's generalized. Her daughter is 9.5 years old with a chronic health issue and has so many minor medical trauma, needles, MRIs, medications, side effects. Any suggestions on how to help her and help her with her full backpack?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a full backpack when you have ongoing health trauma because, first of all, there's pain. Nobody likes pain. It hurts. And we all, when there's pain, we contract, and contraction is related to fear and anxiety. So there's always going to be fear and anxiety when there's pain. And also when there's stress about health, when there's worry that, oh, now the pain's going to get worse, or now I'm going to not be able to do something because I have a health issue or a challenge, or somebody has made fun of me, or I'm not accepted like the other kids. There are all kinds of things that come into play with this. So, exactly right. You're going to have a full backpack. I would say the best, well, as you do peaceful parenting, you learn the best thing to do with a full backpack is to laugh until you can cry. So there's some things that are too deep for laughter to get to. You're going to need to cry those things out. But laughter opens those doors. It sort of skims off the top layer of stuff in the backpack and loosens up so the child or adult is not so tightly wound. If we can help kids laugh every single day, they're more likely to be able to cry easily. And also really milk the tears. Have opportunities to cry. Everybody needs to cry. And people who have special challenges need to cry more. And that means anyone I know a lot of parents listening to this have kids who have sensory issues or tend toward anxiety. Those kids really need to laugh, and then they really need to cry. And that's absolutely true for this mom as well, that her daughter just has to. So kids I will say, this child is 9.5. Kids can begin to talk about issues by then in a way that they aren't just sobbing, where they can tear up a little bit or be sad. I just wish I was like other kids and didn't have this or whatever. They can express it and feel sad. And you'll see some that if only sigh. And that absolutely does lighten the backpack. But ultimately, laughter, there's nothing like laughing and crying.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Laura, I have a question from Diana. It's a little bit of a two-parter. It's a question regarding her 8-year-old son. She has 3 children, 2 younger children, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. She mentions that she picked up peaceful parenting when her 8-year-old was a toddler, and prior to that, she yelled quite a bit, and she believes that he was not securely attached to her. Mm-hmm. He's very sweet and loving, yet she feels that some things he expresses might make her believe he's not securely attached to her still. And also he seems to have a problem getting really easily distracted. He gets trouble listening in class and at home. He's very smart, but he doesn't listen to directions and he doesn't follow directions.
Okay. So there's a lot there to unpack, but, and listening and following directions, issues with that can come from a bunch of different places, right? So, we do know that some people's brains are just wired a little differently. And so kids who have challenges with ADHD, which I think ADHD is a lot of different things. It's not just one thing, but what is often called ADHD, or what falls into that larger category, kids have a hard time listening and following directions. But also kids who tend to be anxious have a hard time listening and following directions. Not always. Sometimes they're rigidly focused on doing it exactly right and perfectionistically. But many kids who have sort of free-floating anxiety will have a hard time really focusing and paying attention. And therefore executing, even, if you say to them, go to your room, get your jacket, and bring it downstairs and hang it on the thing so it's ready when we go out. That's like too many things, and they cannot, even an 8-year-old can't do a 3-step instruction, for instance. So she also mentioned insecure attachment. So insecure attachment can certainly come from disrupted trust, because really what secure attachment is trust that the adult will be there for you when you will meet your needs. That's what it is. That we know that what causes secure attachment is responsive parenting. And responsiveness means you're meeting the needs of the child. So it's certainly true that if you are yelling a lot at a toddler and they're quite frightened by it, that could disrupt the trust between you, and they could worry about whether you'll meet their needs. Also, because if you're yelling a lot at a toddler, toddlers can totally push your buttons, so you want to yell. But if you're yelling at the toddler, it's usually because they're in some way misbehaving. And when they're misbehaving, it's usually because they have some big feelings going on. And so when we're yelling, we're not being responsive to their big feelings. So it's certainly possible that doing a lot of yelling could cause an insecure attachment. But I guess what I would really say about this is it doesn't really matter what caused it. I can hear a little bit of concern in the question of, well, did I cause this? Did I damage my child? And I think, that's such a common question that parents worry, well, I didn't come to peaceful parenting until later, and did I in some way damage my child? And I would just say, you don't know the answer. We can't know the answer. And, every child's different. And we also know there's some kids you can yell at and it would have almost no effect. They would be just fine. They're very resilient. Other kids who are super sensitive, you yell at them and then it really has a big effect. And so, every child is unique. So there's also that. So I would just say to Diana, don't torture yourself about whether you caused this. That's the first thing. You can't know. That's the first thing. Your son could easily have been born with a difficulty in paying attention or following directions, right? Luckily, he's very bright. But there is something you can do, and you can do it right now, and that's focus on healing. So, so I think really importantly, Diana, do not even worry about the past. Your job now is to heal whatever your son brings to the table that needs healing. So if he's, for instance, got some anxiety and he has a hard time falling asleep at night, work with him on that. If he seems to have it's not so much about the focusing, it's more about any expression of anxiety, because that's what would be getting in the way of him following directions. And we just talked about helping kids with full backpacks. That's what we're talking about here. A child with a full backpack has a lot of feelings that they've stuffed down, and they need to heal those feelings. And once they do, then they're much less anxious, because anxiety and full backpack are linked. If there's a lot of feelings in the backpack, those feelings don't just stay there. They're jostling to get out, and the child has to be more rigid to keep them down, and they're distracting. And they do keep you from focusing and being fully present in the moment. So I've talked to adults who are usually more articulate about this, about their own experience once they finally work through some of their childhood issues or do a lot of crying about trauma they've had. And what they find is they're more present. They're more relaxed in the present and able to just be fully present. And that's what your son will experience if he gets a chance to empty his full backpack. So I'm going to suggest that you make that your project, that you really help him laugh until he cries, if he's going to cry. Often what kids will do is they'll laugh and laugh and laugh, and then you dump them on the couch and all of a sudden they're sobbing. No, you hurt me. And it's because finally the laughter has opened up access to those feelings. So I also suggest, since you were talking about secure attachment, that you just work to build trust, that you really listen and you really try very hard to be understanding of his perspective so that you build that trust with him. And you can, people who have an insecure attachment can heal that to begin to have a secure attachment. And the way that happens is that we begin to understand what happened to us. So you could even talk with him about, when you were very little, I didn't know how to be a good mom. And I was really stressed out because of my job or whatever was stressing you out at the time. And I didn't really know how to handle a 2-year-old. And I yelled at you a lot. And I think it scared you. And I am so sorry. I think talking to him about that will help heal it. He will begin to have a perspective on what happened, even if he can't really remember. And you can also tell him, but I am different now. I am all here for you. You can trust me. I am your mom. I could never love anyone more than I love you. I am so lucky to be your mom. And when he hears all that from you over and over, you're repairing your relationship with him. And that's the work, right? It doesn't really matter what happened in the past. The work, if you did do something that was hurtful to him, okay, that's the way. It's sort of like, you're not just walking away from it. You're doing the work to repair that now. So anytime he has a hard time, you're showing up with extra patience and compassion. And I think you'll see him continue to grow in his trust of you, but also maybe to settle more into his own skin as he gets a chance to work this all out.
Thank you, Dr. Laura. I have two very similar questions, and I'm going to apologize in advance because for both members, your name is not showing up on my feed. They're fairly similar. The first being they're both about setting empathic limits and having really strong tantrums in the face of setting empathic limits. The first is for a 3-year-old. She'll be 3 at the end of March. She's very verbal, although has a very challenging temperament. She's easily frustrated and upset, especially when hungry.
I can relate.
Yes. She often screams demands at her caregiver: get my water, wipe my nose, get my blanket, and she's pretty demanding.
She must have siblings. Does she have siblings, this child?
I don't have that information. What I do know is that often, at least once a day, she wants to be spoon-fed by her parent as well.
Okay.
So that's the first. The second might kind of tie into this. It's a 5.5-year-old daughter who, again, had some empathic limits set after not being able to have another treat and had a huge explosive reaction, including saying, I want to die and not come back, so you know that you can feel sad, like really angry words to her parent. And that lasted for at least half an hour.
Okay. So these are both kids, it sounds to me, who have a full backpack. The first child, the 3-year-old who is demanding, is worried about getting her needs met. She's also maybe being provocative, right? She is only 3, but she is maybe being provocative, right? That she is trying to start a fight because she needs to cry. That's entirely possible. But demanding.
Oh, I lost you.
Because we have stuff inside ourselves we're trying to control. So that's a full backpack. So I would actually spoon feed her. When she asked to be spoon fed, I would spoon feed her, but I would make a rule about it. I'm happy to give, I know the mom is saying, I'll feed her a bite and then she feeds herself a little. That's fine. I think she's expressing a need there, something that she needs. And I don't see any reason not to give it to her. But you can have it be one meal. Whatever the meal is you most want to buy piece, if whatever that meal is, that's the one I would be willing to do the spoon feeding, because when you set you're going to say, we never do the spoon feeding at breakfast, or we never do it at lunch, or whatever. That's one way to do it. The other is, which is she the most able to self-regulate? She's probably very tired at dinner and least able to self-regulate at dinner. So you could say, in the morning and at lunch, you won't spoon feed her because she can actually pull it together and feed herself at that point. But by dinner, she's wiped and, she's just exhausted. And, But so I do think it's a good idea not to spoon feed her every single meal. I do think that. But but I have no problem with spoon feeding her one meal because I think she is feeling like she's not getting taken care of in some deep way that she needs it. That's what I'm hearing. Um, and of course, she shouts demands when she's having a tantrum. That's just honestly pretty normal for people having tantrums, including older people having tantrums, to shout demands. But I would say that that's just her attempt to hold all these horrible feelings that are coming up at bay, right? And so when she is demanding either during a tantrum or any other time, I would just say, "Oh, you wish I would do whatever, or you're asking me to wipe your nose. I'm happy to wipe your nose, sweetie." So it sounds like this is what this mom is saying. You can just calmly say, "I need water. I'll get it for you." But it's it's very common until kids believe that their needs will be met. It's very common for them to ask in a demanding way. And I think to just say, you want water. So first of all, a 3-year-old can get their own water. I assume you set your house up so a 3-year-old can get water. 3-year-olds should be allowed to get their own water. They shouldn't need to ask you. And when you allow them to get their own water, it's allowing them to meet their need for mastery. So that's actually and autonomy. So the best way to get kids to do what you want is for us to be for us to be meeting their other needs, allowing them to meet some of these other needs as you set the limit. So water should not be anything you're getting for your child anyway, is my belief on this. Children should always be allowed to have water. Now, if you have a kid who's really at the end of their rope and they just need a little water, of course you can get them water. If I'm sitting on the couch and I'm exhausted, it's the end of the day, and my husband is nearby, over near the sink in the kitchen, and I say, "Oh, honey, would you bring me some water?" He's not going to say, "You could get it yourself." He's going to say, "Of course, sweetheart," and bring me water, right? And we can certainly do that for our kids. But I'm saying in general, it's great when kids can get their own water. But I'm thinking of something else that she's, asking, like, cover me with my blanket. Again, she's really tired then. I don't see any reason not to say, "You really want me to cover you with your blanket," and cover her. I think the more she feels like her needs will be met, the less she's going to fight with you to meet them. I'm not hearing anything that she can, wipe my nose. Um, you know, I guess it might be something that I guess I'm struggling to see why it's an issue, these things. These are things that you would normally do for a 3-year-old. So I don't think that's an issue. But I think it's more the tone of voice that she's using with her mom. I think that's what's bothering her mom probably and pushing her buttons. And I guess I would just say exactly what you're doing, but not as a reprimand. "Oh my goodness, you really need me to wipe your nose. You're having such a hard time. Let's wipe that nose," right? And that's it. And a child who knows you're going to show up for them like that, they're not going to be needing to make demands in that same rude way. And you can also say, if it bothers you, or if her tone of voice bothers you, you can say, "Sweetie, you can just as I know this mom is now doing, you can, after you've met the need, you can say, you can always just ask and I will always do it. You never have to worry." I would also, if you set a limit, and this is a different one, because this woman I don't see is setting limits as much and getting the feedback from the child. I think that it's just the demands are just happening. But I think in setting limits with a child like this, you set limits and you just be very empathic while they cry, because it's okay for the kid to cry, and then you might find her being less provocative. So the 5-year-old, you said that it's a similar question. The 5-year-old, it sounds to me in this case like you set a limit and she gets very upset and totally loses it. And we don't know what she was crying about. It may not have been about the treat that she's upset about. Who knows? Who knows? And I think it's totally fine to have her be completely upset and say, "You really wanted those gummies and no more gummies," right? And when she screams at you, "I want to die and not come back," and then you would feel so sad, you can say, "You are so mad at me right now that you're saying the worst things you can think of." That's all. Just acknowledge it. You're so mad at me. You're saying that because you should kill yourself. She is one of the things she said. You know, you are so mad at me right now that you're saying the worst things you can think of. I understand. I understand you're really mad. You want those gummies more than anything, and you think it would make you feel better. But remember, it's not probably even about the gummies, right? And so she's letting, what you want to do is create safety, because in this case, this child responded to the limits by getting very angry and aggressive, right? She was throwing the clothes around and the stuffed animals and trying to scratch people and that stuff. So the way you keep a child from being aggressive is to help them to feel safe enough to cry. And in this case, it sounds like this child did not fully cry. She really did not, she just stayed in the safety of her aggression. And the way that you get around that is to create safety in that moment, but also do laughing at other times. Because as I just said, when kids are really wound up and they have a full backpack, which this five-year-old clearly does, they need a chance to laugh, to let that stuff out and to be able to cry. And rage doesn't dissipate until it feels heard. So you can acknowledge the things that she's angry about, if you know what it is, the gummies, but it's not just the gummies, and I would say that I'm just looking at the question, yelling isn't as much of a struggle now. Yes, that's wonderful. Wonderful. You've obviously been working so hard, and yelling is not so much of a struggle now. That's amazing and wonderful. And I would say probably what's happening is that your daughter feels safe enough that all of the fears she felt from the time that it was a struggle are starting to come up. And when those fears come up, she doesn't want to feel those fears. And so she fends them off with aggression, right? That's the classic conundrum, right? That she's got all this fear and pain from back when it was more of a struggle for you and you were yelling more. And so I would talk with her about that. Sometimes you feel so bad inside and you get so angry at me, and you can always tell me when you're upset. So I know that this mom said, we've told her many times it's not okay to do this, like throw things on the floor. It's a 5-year-old. She's showing you all the stuff she's been storing up for a long time. You've changed. Yes, you've changed. She will change too. But you're ahead of her by some months. It always works that way. Because once you change, you create safety, then she's able to show you all the stuff she's been carrying. And you will find she's not going to be dumping things on the floor after that.
That is a relief. That's a relief. Dr. Laura, I have a question from Anna. It's not going to show up on the feed. She's having a hard time. She can see us. She's having technical difficulties. Okay. This is a text. It is in regard to special time with her 3-year-old son, who is her only child. She's just started adopting special time, but she's at a loss, and I think that it feels uncomfortable. So she has a specific question. For instance, if he's playing with blocks and I say it's time for special time and put the timer on, do we stop playing with blocks and do something specific together? It feels like when we get to the end of special time, she's just been commenting and participating with him when he's playing. And the timer goes off. We haven't really done anything differently for the last 15 minutes. I've tried it a few times, but I think because I'm a bit hesitant, he now says he definitely doesn't want to do special time.
Right.
And yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm so glad that she brought this up, and I'd like to actually talk a little bit about special time, because that's what we're going to focus on for the next month. And it does sound like that's, there are lots of challenges that parents run into with special time, and this is one of them. So first of all, play is children's work. And if a child is playing without you and playing with blocks, that's really not a great time to do special time if you can avoid it. Because you never, the old adage, never wake a sleeping baby, never interrupt a playing child. And if you have 2 of them and they're playing together nicely, even more so. So I basically would try not to have special time at that time. And maybe it's your only chance. Maybe it's the only way you can have time with your child. That's okay. I would sense your child has, your child has now a negative reaction to special time. But what you could, so we can talk about how to get out of that and into something else with them now. But just starting with, if he didn't have that reaction, if you were in just starting special time, you could say, we're going to do special time, and this is our last chance before bed or before dinner or whatever. So we're not going to, if we're going to have special time today, this is our chance. I really want to have special time with you. I am going to set the timer for 15 minutes. You want to do it with me? And your kid's like, okay. And you set the timer. You say, okay, I am all yours for 15 minutes, you and me. The end. What would you like to do with that time? And your kid might say, well, I'm playing with blocks. And you can say, okay, you want to play with blocks? Great, right? You don't have to impose something else. In fact, you shouldn't. It's your child's job to decide what they want to do during special time. So you say, okay, let's play with the blocks. And you sit down with your child, and remember, special time is child-led, not parent-led. So he's playing with the blocks. If he was doing it before you came into the room, then he's still doing it. And you're sitting there and you're watching him. And you might say, oh, you're building it taller and taller. You know, because that's what he's doing. You don't even know what he's building, but you're building it taller and taller. Or, oh, it's so frustrating when they fall down like that, right? You're just acknowledging his experience of what's happening. You might think of yourself as a therapist, a play therapist, because what play therapists do is exactly this. They simply acknowledge the child's experience in that moment. And if your child if they feel, often that's enough for them. They're thrilled to get that, to have somebody really notice them. And they might test you. They might be like, I'm building taller and taller. And then they might start building it wider and wider to see if that's okay too. Or if you've got an agenda that you only want them to build it taller. And you can say, now you're building it wider, right? So whatever they do is good with you is the point. And sometimes that's enough for kids, most of the time, but not always. Sometimes they'll say, here, you build too. You build too. And sometimes that's a response to feeling a little bit on the spot, like somebody's just looking at them and that feels a little uncomfortable. So they want you to build too. That's true. Or sometimes it's because they want more interaction with you, in which case that's fine too. So you say, I'll build too. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to build? Where should I build? And they say, you build the wall here and I'll build the wall here. And you say, okay, should I build the wall like this? And they're giving you direction. So that's special time. And when the timer goes off 15 minutes later, it might be that nothing special has happened. All you've done is, under your child's direction, you have put these blocks where the child wants you to put them. And that's okay. You say, oh, the timer's off. End of special time. And you stop the timer and you say, I love special time with you. I love just being with you. And I love watching what you're doing. I love to see what you're doing. And, I had an experience. I was just thinking of this the other day. Um, uh, I was at a meeting, and Ralph Roberts, who started Comcast, happened to be at the meeting. And he came up to me at the end of the meeting and he said, I love to watch you work. And I was thinking about this the other day, which is why I'm raising it. I wouldn't have even thought about it because he's now been dead for some years. But I was thinking about it in the context of children. Children need to hear this from us. I love to watch you work. And that's what we're really doing with special time, with the blocks in this case. I love to watch you work. And that's an amazing thing, to feel seen while you do your creative work in the world, right? Which is what your child is doing with the blocks. So it doesn't have to be anything special. Your child doesn't have to bare their soul. You're establishing trust and you're helping them feel really seen. And that's a gift that's hard to replace. We can also talk more about other issues with special time if people want some more direction on special time. I guess I'd love to hear from other parents any issues that are coming up for them around special time. Like, is special time something that you're using well in your house and you love it and your kid begs for it? Or is special time something your kid hates or that you hate? In which case, why? If there's anything in specific about special time, I can address that by making a special audio about it that I can post and give those answers to people since we're embarking on our special time month.
Amazing. Thank you. We have so many questions today.
Okay. So let's do that. Let's not focus on special time unless, and we can compile all the special time questions. You can send them to me and I'll just make an audio about special time and address the blocks people are having. And anyone who hasn't submitted a question, think about special time. And then maybe we'll have a thread on the group that you could post, Candace, and people can post issues they're having with special time and I can just address them in another setting.
Thank you so much. I have a question from Kylie. She thinks that her eldest child has ADHD. He's 5 and they're heading towards assessments. And she is unsure how to talk to him about seeing a doctor and psychiatrist. Don't want him to feel less than, etc. But he's struggling so much, especially since starting school 5 weeks ago.
Okay. So I totally understand that. And it's always a challenge. And I'm going to give her an answer, but I also think, Kylie, that you should, when you make an appointment, ask them what they recommend you say to a child, because they will, always have a protocol that they want, not they want you to follow, but they suggest that you say, and it will be something along the lines of what I'm going to say, but it may have some fine tuning that's, useful because this is what they do all day. So what I would say is, it's so frustrating, huh? What's going on in school, right? When the kid, have conversations about school, have them on a regular basis, not in a sense of finding fault with your child, obviously. And I know Kylie wouldn't do that, but in the sense of listening to the frustrations your child has, like your kid thought they were doing the right thing and then the teacher yelled at them, or they thought they were doing the right thing and then they didn't get done with the thing they were supposed to get done with and all the other kids did and they felt terrible or whatever. And empathize with the experience your child is having at school in the last 5 weeks, that it's just so hard. And then say, everybody's minds work a little differently. And some people are more able to sit still, if that's, for instance, one of the things that he's struggling with, or, to sit still in circle time. And they can really sit still and listen. And other people, they have race car minds that are always in motion, room, room, room. And it's harder for them to sit still, or it's harder for them to focus on the instruction or whatever the issue is that your son is having a challenge with. And say, there are special doctors that help kids when they're having these kinds of challenges. And there's a lady we're going to take you to see who helps kids when they have these issues. And she has games that she plays with you, because this would be the assessment, right? The assessment would be the games she plays with you. She has games she plays with you. Because, for a kid that age, he's only 5. There will be games. It will be like, put these blocks in order, or, see if you can tell what story is being told by these pictures that are out of order, or, can you, basically something where he has to control his impulses to be able to answer the question as an example. So there's a lady who plays games with kids and helps you when you have a hard time paying attention. And, as I said, that they may have some special things that they would suggest that she say, but that's probably where I would start, from it being a solution to the challenge he's having.
Okay, thank you so much. I have a question from Michelle. And Michelle, some advice for bedtime for a 4-year-old who cannot sit still and lie down in bed, and so he won't sleep until 8:30 each night. During bedtime, he runs around the house, making a huge mess, constantly going to the fridge for food, even if he's just finished eating. The routine takes hours. And it's very hard to peaceful parent.
Yes, it is. That's the hardest time. For me, bedtime was always the hardest time to peaceful parent, because, you don't have as many resources yourself. So I would say, first of all, I'm not hearing about siblings here, but a 4-year-old who is being put to bed by a parent, if it's a one-on-one interaction, they can't be running to the refrigerator because you're with them, right? And if they start to run to the refrigerator, you grab them up and you throw them up in the air and you say, wait a minute, it's not refrigerator time, it's bedtime, right? and you take them back in the room. One thing that, and I'm making it sound like I'm starting roughhousing by doing that, but the roughhousing really should happen earlier. You're not going to roughhouse with him really at that moment because he could get quite revved up. But really important to have done roughhousing at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, or really not later than 5:30 probably for him if they're aiming for a 7:30 bedtime, which is I assume what they're aiming for. I mean, I guess it depends on what time this child gets up in the morning. If he wakes up in the morning without any alarm or any parent waking him up and he's in a good mood, then probably he's getting enough sleep going to bed at 8:30. But I'm assuming that that's not the case, right? We should never have to wake children up. They should wake up on their own. And if they wake up on their own, they're usually in a good mood because they woke up at the right point in the sleep cycle, right? That's how we know that they got enough sleep. So if he's not seeming to be in a good mood, he may be being awakened by light in his room, noise from the street, whatever. So you want to make sure you've done, set up the room so that there's darkness and sounds, that the sounds are being kept out. But presuming that he is not waking up on his own and you're having to wake him up, then I would say definitely you want to ratchet bedtime back, because what happens when kids stay up too late is they get overtired. And so I'm gathering from this question that she wants to get him to bed earlier, and 8:30 seems late to her, and that she thinks he was ready for bed before that. In that case, there's a regular routine you follow, and the refrigerator is not part of that routine. Running around the house, making a huge mess is not part of the routine. Where's the parent while this is happening, right? The parent would be with the child. Now, maybe you have 4 kids and you can't be with that child every minute. That's a lot harder, because or maybe you have a little baby. Well, you have only one other child, but they're a baby and they need to be nursed to sleep or whatever. So that does make it a lot harder if you're the only adult putting the child to bed. But 4-year-olds do not. I've known only a couple of 4-year-olds, and the many 4-year-olds I've heard about over the years, I've only known a couple who actually were able to say, I'm tired, I want to go to bed, and happily put themselves in their room to go to bed. I think in general, 4-year-olds will absolutely resist bedtime, and it's the parent's job to stay in a good mood and keep them on track with the routine and not let them go to the refrigerator or anywhere else. I don't know what else to say. You have to stay with them. But
Yeah.
the routine really matters. The routine matters, and just setting really clear limits. And if the kid does start to run somewhere else, refrigerator or somewhere else, to make a mess, I would not only would I grab them up, I would be, if he's getting wild, I would take him in the room and I would start to speak soothingly. And if he's like getting more and more frantic, I would say, whoa, 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 it's bedtime. It's bedtime, sweetie. And usually what happens is at that point, they get sort of frenzied and then they begin to cry, if that's what he needs to do. But again, if you've done roughhousing with him and you do it every single day for half an hour at 5 o'clock, then this isn't going to be happening most of the time.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have, I guess a last question-ish up to you from Bryn. Bryn kind of has a little bit of a two-parter. She runs an all-outdoor nature immersion program for children's ages 3 to 10. Sounds fantastic. And her 4-year-old daughter is in her class. Small incidents like bumping into something will cause her to have violent outbursts. And these violent outbursts are specific to when she's in the program with her mom. And so Bryn is wondering whether it's because she's sharing her mom and feeling threatened, or if she just feels more comfortable expressing herself out in the class. But it is upsetting to the other children and difficult to manage in a large class setting. And as an addendum, Bryn does wonder how peaceful parenting transfers into a teaching environment, which might be 2 very large questions.
I'm going to keep the answer to the second one very short, which is that there's a blog post on my website, Peaceful Parenting Teaching. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's something like that. And Bryn, if you have a hard time finding it, when you go to the AHA Parenting website and put that in the search box, I think it might be Peaceful Parenting applied to the classroom. But if you have a hard time finding it, just shoot an email to Candace or me and we'll figure it out for you. There are also some really good books about peaceful parenting in the classroom, or these kinds of techniques. Becky Bailey is one person, and there's somebody whose name I can't remember who put out a pretty good book on this a few years ago, which also I'd be happy to give the information to Candace and she can post it for you. Okay, So, and I do think it works in the classroom is the answer to that. But it's different. You're not doing scheduled meltdowns. When you have, 15 kids in a class, you can't do scheduled meltdowns. What you are doing is regulating yourself and connecting with the child and coaching them to be their best self. And coaching includes emotion coaching in the sense of acknowledging emotions. But you're not, you might have laughter and running around outside, but you're not having, you're not their safe place usually, because they're not your child, right? They're not usually coming to you and sobbing the way that they would do at home safely with their special adults, their parents. So your own daughter is, of course, your own kid. And so that's sort of the answer to your question, is that she does feel safer with you. I do wonder about having to share you. I've heard many times over the years questions from caregivers who have like home daycares and their children have a very hard time with them having the other kids there. Not always, but often. And I think it just is hard. I think watching your parent be available to everybody else, and it makes you feel like they're less available to you. And so you say everything sets her off and makes her cry. I'm wondering when you're alone with her, if that's the same way, or if she cries less, or if she cries more. If she cries more, that's a full backpack issue. And you need to be doing that, helping her to offload stuff when other people aren't around. If she cries more when you're alone with her. If she cries less when you're alone with her, then that's, I'm worried I'm not going to get my needs met kind of thing. And I would talk with her about it and bend over backwards to help her to feel those emotions and also know she's going to get her needs met. I would really, really work with her on when everybody else is around, it must worry you that maybe I won't be able to take care of you. And so you cry and scream pretty loudly because you want to make sure I'm really going to take care of you. I will always take care of you, sweetheart, no matter what other kids are around. You are my daughter, my special, whatever her name is. And no matter what, I will always take care of you. And I'm the teacher for the other kids too. That is true. And so, this is what's hard. You're basically asking her to stop being your child while you're being her teacher. It's a different relationship. And so I'm wondering if there's, play with the ideas I've given you so far and see, because I would hate to have her in another classroom or stop having her be in your classroom. It just sounds so hard to have to do that. And yet, it may be more than she can handle. But work with what I've told you so far, and maybe that'll be enough that she's also getting older, so she's going to be more and more able to articulate these things.
Excellent.
Helps you work them through. When you can articulate something, you don't have to act it out, right?
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Dr. Laura, it is 7:56. What would you like to do?
We can definitely, Candace, thank you. We can definitely do one more question. I know there are a bunch more. I'm sorry we won't be able to get to them, but I'm relying on you to read through and see what we need to focus on.
Absolutely.
I hope can be done on the group page. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think that some of this stuff is stuff that we can definitely talk about.
Okay.
We have lots of siblings. Okay, I'm going to go right here. And again, we're looking, at emptying a backpack. I think this is interesting. This is a question, pardon me, from Marie-Hélène. And her daughter is 9, and she's trying to help her empty her full backpack. It sounds like there's family dynamics where her wife is very anxious and she feels that there's a lot of tension between herself and her wife. Mm-hmm. And her daughter has a very full backpack and she always feels like her daughter is very guarded. And I feel it's interesting because of the age when we start to move up with older children.
Yes. By the time they're 9, they're not as volatile, but they've also become more entrenched in their defense system, right? At whatever that is. And so they can be more rigid. I would love to hear a little bit more about so first of all, the tensions with that Marie Helene is having with her wife, you know, when we fight with our partners, kids always feel that. It always upsets them. And so I would say the first thing is, I understand having the tension, you know, there's tension in every partnership. But we need to be able to work it out in a way that is not going to be in front of the kids. And so I'm going to encourage Marie Helene and her wife to go to counseling. I think it will make a tremendous difference. First of all, you deserve it. You deserve to have a great relationship, and your child deserves to live in a home where there's not tension. So that would be the first thing I would say. And if there's a specific thing about the way the 9-year-old is acting, you said probably full backpack. Is that what you said?
Full backpack, and I feel like she's always guarded, like always
guarded.
Yeah.
Frozen a little. I hope I'm not frozen.
It was very short, but yes.
Okay. All right. So some people just are more guarded by nature. That is true. But also, you know, it could be that she has gotten good at hiding her feelings because she is, you know, because it's been a tense environment, or because of the kind of parenting that's been happening in the home, whatever. So I guess I would say about the guardedness, that playfulness is going to be the best thing you can do. And I admit that playfulness is harder with a 9-year-old. Getting them laughing can be harder, but I do think that that's going to make all the difference in the world. So there are games that you can play with kids to get them laughing. If Marie Helene has my workbook, there's a lot of games in the workbook, including for kids that age, that would work with kids that age. If she doesn't, then we will figure out a way to get some game suggestions to you. And also ask in the group. And also you can go on the course Facebook page, which has a larger group, and ask them for games to play with a 9-year-old to get them laughing. But a 9-year-old who's really guarded needs to laugh more. I think that's going to be your, you know, it's so interesting that we're talking about that so much tonight, but I think laughter is the shortest distance between any two people. And it absolutely is the way to heal tension.
Perfect. I would love to ask this question from Maya. This came up in our discussion actually this month, and I think it's a really important question. She really wants to know your opinion about going onto medication, because she is feeling that she really loses it with her children. And I believe from our conversation, Haya, you do have a psychiatrist or a psychologist that you're working with, and you have been thinking about going on medication. I don't consider myself a specifically anxious person. In fact, I think most people who know me would be surprised. But with my kids, it's a really big struggle. I do have a large family and a lot going on.
So I would say I have seen instances where going on medication makes all the difference in the world in a really positive way. And it is never my first choice. My first choice is always to say, and the reason it's not my first choice is because there are side effects, and it can be hard to get off the medication sometimes. So my first choice is always to say, try to work with what resources you have. Try to work inside your own mind to, you know, manage your emotions and self-regulate. Try to work in some sort of a counseling or therapeutic situation to work through old issues. There are other ways to work through old issues as well, like, as I mentioned, my workbook, simply the course. You know, everyone who is part of this membership group took the online course, the Peaceful Parent Happy Kids online course. And there's a lot of self-healing in that course. And I receive notes from people all the time taking the course who say, I've been in therapy for years, but this did more for me than years of therapy. So there are many things you can do that are helpful. And I guess I would say it's not either or. If you feel like you've done some of that work and you're still really having a hard time self-regulating, and obviously I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't prescribe medication, but you have a psychiatrist you're working with who, and I would not just ask your family doctor. I would actually go to someone who is a mental health professional and ask them to evaluate you, basically. And to monitor, obviously, because it can take a while to get the right medication and the right dosage. And sometimes it's a combination of medications. But then don't just do that. Also use the opportunity. This will give you more, a little bit more of a breathing room, more of a pause before you're upset. And use that breathing room to do the healing that's going to help you, and continue to work on yourself. Don't just use it. Don't just use the medication by itself. Always use the medication with other work on yourself so that you can maybe use less and less medication. You'll see. But really, I just would say no shame, no blame. My goodness, if this is, everybody's wired a little differently. And if this is what's going to help you, then be grateful that you live at a time and place where it's available.
Thank you, Dr. Laura. I feel like we have a lot of kind of follow-ups to a lot of our questions. We also have a lot of people who, okay, I'm coming up to something new here. Apologize.
No worries. Take your time.
Okay. Okay.
I know there will always be more questions than
so many questions. I know we're very excited.
If there's another one that you think is important, I'm happy to do that. And then, we'll do the rest the best we can on the group. And remember, if there are specific themes,
yes,
either now or at another time, we can also address them as a whole.
Yes. Okay. So we do have a lot of interest in, okay, following up. I apologize. I got lost.
No, that's why we do this with you and me together, Candace, because there's no way I could talk and answer and think at the same time that I would be following the list of questions. So yeah. That's great. I'm glad you're the one doing that.
Okay. I have a question here. Okay. This is very, okay. And I apologize again. I know, okay. Your name, I have to look on two feeds. I apologize, everyone.
Don't worry. It's okay. Just do the question without the name.
Okay, so member KJ Hilton. Sorry, KJ. She has a 4.5-year-old son who is very strong-willed and very sensitive. He's an only child. This is an interesting question. We moved homes 2 months ago to a house with locks on the doors, and he's been locking himself in rooms every time he gets a no from his parents. Or if something breaks, I'm possibly going to have an interruption in a moment, and I apologize as my children come home.
I know we're supposed to be done, so there's a
I know. Yep, please. So if it's anything he can't control, he'll run around and he'll lock himself into a room. Once he was cooking and he locked the bathroom and blocked the sink and left the water running. And then he ran out and said, "Mommy, I locked the door and left the water running." And
so this is power. I mean,
yeah, that's what is happening. I know that they've had to call a locksmith. It's a very, very long question.
Yeah, this is such an interesting question. I have to tell you the truth. I don't think I've ever heard exactly this question. So it's very interesting. So at first I thought it was a question about safety. He's moved to a new home and he's locking doors. That could be an indication of not feeling as safe in his new home. But then when you said it's actually in response to when his parents say no to him, right? I'm thinking, oh, he's doing the worst thing he can think of, because, 4-year-olds, it's the worst thing he can think of to go and, lock the door and freak his parents out, right? They'll be terrified that he's locked himself in somewhere. But then when I hear that he turned the water on and plugged up the sink and let the water run, which he knows is going to overflow, and then lock the door so no one can get in. Wow, this is amazing. The strategic thinking here. Again, doing the worst thing he can think of, but exercising power. And 4-year-olds do exercise power. 4-year-olds do, they threaten you with the worst thing they can think of, right? Usually, like, you can't come to my birthday party. But in this case, it's not just a threat. He's doing the worst thing he can think of. I would say, honestly, I don't know what the behavior comes from. It sounds like power struggles, that, could be power struggles, right? Uh, but so if I would ask the parents, if there's other ways in which there's a power struggle going on, need to disarm those power struggles, need to start working more with win-win solutions. Could be that's going on. I would also say anger only dissipates when it feels heard. So this is a child who's getting really angry and trying to show you how angry he is, and how much power he has in the situation. So really listening to what he's angry about and acknowledging it. You really wish you could. You wish I would say yes to this. You wish that I would let you. You're so mad about this. It isn't what you wanted. This day really isn't going the way you wanted. Just acknowledging the anger is really critical for a kid like this. I would also say you might have to work with a locksmith and deactivate all your locks. You don't need a door handle on your bathroom that locks. You can have one, most of us do, but you don't need one. You can have a handle that doesn't lock. And in general, I suggest to parents that when kids are little, you do not have a doorknob on their room that locks, and you do not have a doorknob on the bathroom that locks. And if he's a smart kid, he's probably already figured out every door handle in the house that can lock, because not everything does. Maybe the laundry room doesn't lock, for instance, right? But I would probably have a locksmith come and just replace all those door handles for now. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a locksmith. You can go to Home Depot and buy a bunch of cheap door handles and put them in temporarily, and ones without locks. And even I could probably maybe do that, I think. You may not have to be a handy person to do it, is what I'm trying to say, because I'm not. But I would say start there for sure, but also go to what is the behavior indicating, right? Go underneath the behavior to try to understand how to heal the cause of it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Anything that you would like to say as we head into our new month?
Well, I'm not going to talk about special time now. We're over time, and I said I would do that elsewise, but I'd love to hear from everybody how special time is working in your life. What do you like about it? What do you hate about it? Or does it work for you? And then I can address those things at another time. We talked at the beginning of our conversation about self-regulation. And I guess any feedback that people have about this membership is taking shape as we go along. So I realized in our first month together that I needed to do a better job organizing the emails. And by the third email, I had that down. And I think the third and fourth emails, I got feedback from people. Oh, this is so great. We've got all the links in one place. It's very organized. And I'll make sure to do that. The other thing I realized is that I was giving people too much work. I shouldn't have sent out 2 things in the second email, just 1, because it's just too much. Your parents, I'm looking at this to be support for you to work on the most important things that are going to change your ability to be the parent you want to be. And the most important things are all the things you already know about, like self-regulation, special time. But we're trying to go for the tools that will really most help you in the least amount of time. So we're going to do the focus for the whole month. But I don't want it to be more than 15 minutes a day for you. I don't think you have more than 15 minutes a day. You're a parent. So I think that's about the right amount of time. If that seems like too little or too much, I'd love to hear. But any other feedback? I mean, I don't know whether everybody who's listening would agree with the feedback I'm giving you about what I've perceived, but any feedback you have about this, is it helpful? Does it feel overwhelming? Would you like more work to do, less work to do? All of that would be helpful to me to make this as valuable as possible for you participating in it. So we're inventing this as we go along. And of course, I have an architecture in my mind for how it's going to be. But just like the course, I've made a lot of modifications since it started. And, we'll keep modifying this. We know what path is going to get us to be successful as peaceful parents. The question is how to best help you along that path with the integrating it into your life in the easiest way. So that's what I would love feedback about if anybody has that.
Thank you, Dr. Laura, for your wisdom and your generosity with that wisdom. There was lots of great questions. Thanks to everyone.
Yes, I would say thank you for those questions. If you did not get your question answered, don't worry. First of all, there will be lots of other chances to ask me directly, but also bring it up on the Facebook group where I've seen a lot of wisdom and where you have Candace to support you as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody. Goodbye.
Good night.